Alright guys, here we go. We're going to do our second part of our two-part lesson on graphs. Today we're going to learn bar graphs, histograms, and pie charts. This is in addition, obviously, to the frequency tables, line plots, and line graphs that we've already discussed. First one we're going to do is the bar graph. Bar graph is a graph that uses horizontal or vertical bars to display information. The features of a bar graph include used to compare amounts, and the bars are the same width with space in between each data item. Okay, I know you've seen bar graphs before. They're probably one of the most popular type of graph that you can come up with if I say name a graph. But the big thing with a bar graph is to understand that they are the same width and space in between each data item. Make sure you guys write down the definition as well as the features. If you need time, pause it please, and you guys can get that down. But I want to make sure that you guys get all this information down so that we can talk about it tomorrow. And Super Bowl wins is the example in this bar graph, but I'm sure you guys have seen it before. Next slide we are going to do an example. Again, you guys don't have to write this down, but if you'd like to for a little extra help, or at least to have something in your notebook to kind of refer to when we start talking about bar graphs in our discussion that we're probably going to have tomorrow. So here's the example: is the games won per sport. These are fake numbers, but we can just call it Mifflin County sports and how many games they won per sport. So we start with baseball's 5, football's 8, soccer's 7, and basketball's 10. The big part of this is we want to make sure that we have our sports on the bottom, or we can also put them on the side. That's not a big deal either, but for this one, let's just put them on the bottom. And I'm going to abbreviate basketball as b-ball. The next thing we have to do is to make sure our scale on the left side, or the number of sports, is written relatively evenly throughout the whole thing. So I'm going to say, let's just start. We'll just number these by 1, trying to leave an even amount of space in between each number. Maybe stopping at 11. Okay, and for baseball rather, we are going to go to 5. We're going to draw our bar, and why not? We can fill some of that in. And we're going to go to football. I'm sure you guys have done this stuff before, but if you didn't, please pay attention to what I'm doing. Football, we go to 8, and we draw the bar, and we can color that in if we'd like to or not. Next one is soccer. Soccer is at 7. We're going to go over to soccer, draw a line, draw our bar, and again color it in if you want to make it look the same. All the bars are looking the same. They look approximately the same width. And then we go to basketball, which is at 10, which is our highest, and you can clearly see basketball has had the most wins. It's one way to display data, especially when you're talking about wins. And our bar graph looks pretty nice, but obviously not as nice as the bar graph that you guys are probably going to put on your posters if you decide to do a bar graph. So make sure you don't have to get this example down, but please understand how I created it, where the numbers came from, and if you have any questions on it, please ask questions tomorrow. The next one we're going to go to is a histogram. A definition of a histogram is a graph that uses bars to show the range of frequency of data. So just like a bar graph, the histogram uses bars, and it shows the range. It's the range of frequency of the data, which we'll get back to in our example. But the features, it combines data into equal-sized intervals and no spaces between the bars. Okay, that's very big. There's no spaces. Unlike the bar graph where there is spaces, there are no spaces between the bars. Okay, as you can see in our battery life example here, this battery lives of cell phones, computers, anything like that, they have equal intervals. Each interval has first one's from 0 to 4, second one's from 5 to 9, and the third one's from 10 to 14. And it has the computers or cell phones that there's one computer or cell phone that has a battery life of 0 to 4 hours. There are 3 that have a battery life of 5 to 9, and then obviously there are 2 that have a battery life of 10 to 14 hours. And as you can see, all the bars are all touching each other because there's no amount of hours that between 4 and 5, so that's why it's touching here. So this line here represents the difference between 4 and 5. Here, if I can draw a straight line, is the difference between 9 and 10. So I want you guys to understand that the histogram, they're touching. They're literally touching each other. As you can see the difference, and the intervals are all equal. So, our next slide, we're going to have an example of this, an example of a histogram using test scores. And I'm going to abbreviate each one of their names by the first letter. Oh, actually, I'm not going to do that. What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our histogram has our test scores they're going to be on the bottom. The range is going to be on the bottom. So what's a good range? Well, let's go and we're going to go the test scores from, let's go from 81 to 90. So let's just have 2 bars. So we're going to do the test scores from 81 to 90, and then we're going to do the test scores from 91 to 100. Okay? And we're just going to group them. So we're going to see how many test scores, and on the left side we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and now we want them to touch. We want to see exactly how many we have, and we're going to make our bars for our histogram. So how many test scores are in between the range of 81 and 90? See, 88's in that range, and I think that's the only one. So we have 1, so we're going to draw our line here, 1, and we can color that in if we want to. There's our first one of our histogram. Now, what are the ones between 91 and 100? Well, we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. We'll do this in a different color. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, your histogram bars, I want them to be the same color, but I'm going to do it in red just to show you guys the difference. So since there's 4, we're going to go to 4. We're going to draw our line, and we're going to make sure that these touch. And then we could color this in if we wanted to. I'm going to color it in just for fun, because coloring is really fun on the smartboard. Okay, color it in. So that's a histogram. Again, the red should be blue, but I wanted to show you guys where those bars come from and how it works. So we have intervals that are the same size, and then we did test scores. And in the example, there are 5 test scores. Only 1 is in between the range of 81 and 90, and there are 4 that are in the range of 91 to 100. And that's just one fun way to graph using a histogram. Our next and final graph that we're going to learn this year is a pie chart, or a pie graph, whichever one you choose. The definition of a pie chart or pie graph is a graph that shows data as a percent of a part of a whole. Now that's a little hard to grasp around, but we're using percentages, and we're going to put them in a pie chart. We're going to put them in a piece of pie, and we're going to show a percentage, or like how many people out of the entire group wanted that percent. What percent of the entire group wanted those choices or had an answer in that group. The features, typically a big topic divided into smaller sections. So in our example, favorite type of movie, and there's comedy, there's romance, there's drama, sci-fi, and they all grouped them together in our example over there. So it's a big topic, and it's divided into smaller sections. And then also it compares parts to the whole. So it compares a part, which is the comedy, to a whole group or to a whole thing, which is just movies. So that's two features that they talk about a pie chart or a pie graph. Now we're going to go ahead and do one. We're going to do one together. We're going to do DVD genres in a collection. So we have comedy, romance, and action. Now in a pie chart, you guys aren't going to have to know this, but you guys are going to have to understand that if you guys decide to do one for your project, that we need to put this in a whole piece of pie. We want to make a whole piece of pie or a piece of pizza that represents 75. And we also have to make one that makes up 20, and we need to make one that makes up 5. But the cool thing about this is these numbers work out really well. 75 plus 20 plus 5 is 100, or 100%. So that's a lot easier to come across. So that just means that 75% of this pie, or 3/4 of the pie, is going to be comedy. It's going to be red. So we're going to do this, we're going to do this, and we know that this whole thing here is going to be comedy. And I can't color the whole thing. That would take way too long. But that part is comedy. And then we're going to go to romance, which is 20. And in this example, we're just going to eye test it, but you'd have to use a protractor and come up with a degree. But we talked about protractors in that, but if you want to do one on your project, you can come see me and I can explain how to do it exactly. But since we're just demonstrating what we're doing here, I'm just going to guess and say that looks like 20% to me. And we know that this is the 20% that indicates the romance section. And then I guess the 5% that's action is just everything that's left, because we already did everything else. We already did all of our sections, and it's 100%, which means the whole pie. So we have that one as our action section. Okay, please, I know this was a little confusing, so if you guys don't understand anything, please write down your questions. Please ask them. That's why I told you to leave a little bit of space. Also, if you have ideas about what you guys want to put in a pie chart, please have them ready, because your groups are going to have a lot of time to work tomorrow, a lot of time, most of the period, to work on your project and come up with your ideas and questions. Now, last thing I want to go over is I want to go over this Venn diagram. Now I know we've worked with Venn diagrams with 2 circles, but now we're going to do them with 3. Now we know that a bar graph, the bars don't touch. That's only in the bar graph circle. Just like bars do touch. The only time that bars do touch are in the histogram, and shows the frequency of range of data. So the ranges, that's the main word in this one, is ranges. The range of data. And the range of data is a histogram, and that's only in the histogram section. Going to a pie chart, it compares parts to a whole. The only one that does compare parts to a whole all the time is going to be a pie chart. So you guys want to write this down. In fact, I would like this graph written out as your homework or as your evidence that you did it today. So write this down in your notebook, please. I want all 3 circles, and I want you guys put each one of these things in the circles where they represent it. Also, uses bars. Well, we know that bar graph uses bars, and we know that a histogram uses bars, so we're going to put that in between the histogram and the bar graph. And then the other one is, biggest one, is represents data. Which one of these represents data? Well, they all represent data, and that's why we're putting them in the very middle, because we know that a histogram, pie chart, and bar graph all represent data. So again, if you need to copy that down, please copy that down in your notebook. Pause it and copy it down. If not, our very last slide, I'm going to go through a couple of these questions with you. So, line plots. Line plot uses x's or tallies to show how often something occurs. Is that what a line plot is? Yes, it is. Pie charts. Well, we just had a question on a pie chart, so Question 2 is I'm going to go through all, I think there are 6 of these questions. 6 of these questions are going to how we're going to review and how we're going to go over what each part means. So I'm going to give you guys time tomorrow, not to take this quiz, but we're going to go over the answers to some of these questions. But this is the question that I want you guys to write on a slip of paper, small slip of paper, and then I want you to put it in the basket. Here's the new thing with this. If you guys want to hand it and put it in the basket before you come into class, stop in before homeroom, come into Mrs. Wilhelm's room. The basket's going to be there. Please put your answers in that basket. Okay, you can do that before or after. It doesn't have to be before class. You can put it in when you do it before class, but you don't have to. Please answer this question. Pie charts blank. A, B, C, or D. Please answer the question, and then please come in with questions tomorrow, and also come in with your questions that you want to ask to make the graphs, and please sit with your groups. But this is the question that I'm going to use for the raffle for this lesson. And if you guys have any questions, please write them down, and we're going to go over it during the discussion.